fast, where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to row-wide facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes, trying to get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where we dig deep into the innovations reshaping dairy farming. Today's episode is a game changer. Imagine a world where a single genetic tweak could save a baby's life, and that same technology is now poised to revolutionize your herd. We're breaking down how CRISPR, the gene editing tool behind a recent medical miracle, is steering dairy farming into uncharted territory. From mastitis-resistant Holsteins to heat-tolerant jerseys and the end of dehorning, this isn't sci-fi, it's the future of your farm. We'll unpack the science, the savings, and the ethical questions every dairy professional needs to ask. So grab your milk jug, settle in, and let's explore how gene editing could rewrite the rules of dairy genetics.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a topic that's really stirring things up in ag science, and it has, well, potentially huge implications for your dairy operation. We've put together a pretty comprehensive report for the Bullvine Newsroom, Gene Editing Revolutionizing Dairy Farming, and our job today is to pull out the crucial bits, the real need-to-know stuff for you.
Exactly. This deep dive is all about navigating this fast-moving world of gene editing in dairy. We want to give you a clear picture of what it is, how it's different from older methods, the real benefits for farmers.
And the timelines too, right? Plus costs, regulations, consumer thoughts, the whole package.
The whole package. The goal is really to equip you with solid information so you can make smart decisions for your farm's future.
Okay, let's get right into it then.
Yeah.
What is gene editing exactly? The report uses this analogy I liked, like a molecular find and replace for DNA. And CRISPR-Cas9 is the big name here.
That's a really good way to think about it, yeah. Find and replace. What's key is the precision. It's totally different from older genetic modification where you might stick in genes from, a different species entirely.
Right.
Gene editing lets scientists make really specific tweaks within the animal's own genetic code. The Journal of Dairy Science has a lot on this, calling it a super precise genetic selection tool, right down at the DNA level.
So CRISPR is like what? Tiny scissors cutting and pasting DNA?
Kind of, yeah. Very precise molecular scissors. They find a specific spot and make an edit.
So it's about improving what's already there, not adding totally foreign stuff. The report says this lets you turn on good traits, switch off bad ones, or just fine-tune how genes work. Sounds way more efficient.
Oh, it is. Dramatically so. I mean, think about traditional breeding. You could maybe get some of these changes over, decades.
Right, a long time.
Gene editing. The research we looked at suggests you could achieve what might take, say, 55 years of conventional breeding, potentially in just one generation.
55 years in one generation.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a game changer right there.
It really is. Compressing half a century of progress. That's the potential disruption we're looking at.
Okay, but how does this actually happen on the ground? The report makes it clear, farmers won't be doing CRISPR in the barn.
No, definitely not. This is high-tech lab work. It's done by breeding companies, research institutions, that sort of thing.
So for you listening, access would come through things you already use, like AI or maybe embryo transfer, similar to getting top genetics from Select Sires or GenX now.
Exactly. That's the likely route. The existing infrastructure, the systems you use every day, that's probably how these advanced genetics will be delivered. Dr. Alison Van Einenhem at UC Davis put it well. She said something like,
oh, yeah.
Gene editing doesn't replace breeding programs. It enhances them. It lets us make those precise changes much, much faster.
Right, like how genomic testing sped things up without changing the basic breeding pyramid structure.
Precisely. Same idea, just another powerful tool layered on top.
Okay, got it. So we know what it is. Let's dig into the benefits, the game-changing stuff mentioned in the report. First up, mastitis, called a $2 billion annual problem for the industry. Ouch.
It's a staggering number, isn't it? Really highlights the economic weight of mastitis. And the report breaks it down. Just one clinical case, early lactation, could cost you around $444.
Wow.
Yeah, that's milk loss, treatment, dumped milk, labor, even higher culling risk. So the idea of gene editing creating mastitis-resistant whole skeins, that's huge.
And research is happening, places like Cornell.
That's right. They're looking at specific immune response genes, aiming to boost resistance against bugs like Staph aureus, for example.
The knock-on effects seem massive. The report lists them. Less antibiotic use.
Crucial point, that one.
Lower somatic cell counts, better animal welfare, fewer treatments, maybe even better milk quality premiums.
It's a whole cascade of positives. And think about sustainability. Consumer views on antibiotics. Reducing antibiotic use is a major, major win. It really makes you ask, with these kinds of losses and this potential solution, can the industry afford not to pursue this?
Good question. And lower SEC means healthier cows, better milk, better paychecks, hopefully.
Exactly.
Okay, next big benefit area in the report, dehorning. Gene editing could eliminate the need for it using the polled gene. That feels like a big step for welfare.
A really big step. Dehorning is, it's a tough procedure. Gene editing for the polled gene means calves are born naturally hornless. It's a permanent fix.
And there are cost savings too?
Yep. University Extension folks estimate around $40 per animal saved just on the dehorning process itself. The report compares it to how A2A2 genetics became pretty standard. Polled could go the same way.
So becoming just a baseline expectation.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And the USDA's Ag Research Service, they think this polled trait via gene editing is already in regulatory review. Could be commercially available in, say, 3 to 5 years.
That seems relatively quick compared to maybe some other applications.
It does seem to be one of the front runners, yeah.
All right, another challenge, especially with climate change, heat stress. The report says gene editing has answers here too.
Increasingly critical, this one, when that temperature humidity index, the THI, gets over 72, production just tanks. You know this if you're farming in hotter areas. So research down at the University of Florida, they've introduced the SLICK gene. Gives cattle shorter, sleeker hair coats, helps them handle the heat better.
Slick gene, okay. And does it work?
Field trials will look promising. Data from ag experiment stations shows maybe an 8 to 12% reduction in production losses from heat stress in these SLICK cattle.
8 to 12% less loss during heat waves, that's significant. The report mentioned a California organic farmer losing maybe 15% of summer production to heat.
Exactly. So reducing that loss by 8-12%, that hits the bottom line. Gene editing here offers a permanent built-in solution that works alongside your fans and sprinklers.
It's not just about stopping losses in bad weeks. It's about consistency, right? Keeping production steadier through the heat.
Precisely. It raises a question for you listening, especially if you're in a heat-prone area. How much is heat stress costing you now? What would cutting that loss by, say, 10% mean for your farm's viability?
Good questions to ask. Okay, the report also touched on something exciting. Using gene editing for specialty milk. Creating premium products, maybe alternatives to standard fluid milk.
Yeah, this is really interesting. The potential to fine-tune milk composition is huge. For example, converting A1 cows to produce only A2 milk. Gene editing can do that efficiently by targeting the beta-casein gene.
And people seem interested in A2 milk, right? Willing to pay more.
Studies suggest so, yeah.
Okay.
Growing interest, premium potential. But it goes beyond A2. You could enhance kappa casein for better cheese making, think higher yields, faster setting. Ag research actually showed they could potentially double kappa casein using gene editing.
Double it. Wow.
And then there's removing allergens, like beta-lactoglobulin, to create hypoallergenic milk options.
With fluid milk consumption facing challenges, these specialty milks could be a real opportunity, couldn't they? New markets, added value.
Absolutely. It fits right into diversification, meeting changing consumer tastes. Which leads to a question for the processors and co-ops listening. Are you exploring these specialty milk potentials? Are you looking at how gene editing could create new value streams?
Okay, let's shift gears to the practical side. Timelines. Economics. When can farmers actually get these genetics, and what's it going to cost?
Right, the nitty-gritty. Access, as we said, likely through the breeding companies, AI services, the usual channels. And because AI is so widespread, once a good gene-edited trait gets into elite bulls, it can spread pretty quickly.
Okay, so what are the estimated timelines? The report had some figures based on USDA, ARS, and university work.
It did. So hornlessness, the polled trait, we mentioned 3-5 years, maybe $40 per animal saved. Mastitis resistance, targeting genes like CD18, looking more like 5-7 years out. But with that huge $2 billion potential industry impact, heat tolerance, the SLICK gene, maybe 6-8 years, offering that 8-12% reduction in heat loss. And further out, maybe 8-10 years. things like tuberculosis resistance, targeting the NRAMP1 gene, which could save the industry $150 million a year.
The report also mentioned an uncomfortable truth, that these timelines might drag on because of regulations or just industry inertia, not just technical hurdles.
That's a really important caveat. Yes, the tech might be ready or nearly ready, but the pathway to market can be slow. Economic analyses suggest every year of delay costs the industry billions in lost opportunities. Billions.
Billions lost. And what about the cost to the farmer for these genetics? Premium price expected.
Probably, at least initially. You'd expect a premium over conventional semen or embryos that reflects the R&D costs and the extra value these traits bring. We saw the same pattern with sex semen with high genomic embryos when they first came out.
But you have to weigh that initial cost against the long-term savings, right? That's the calculation.
Exactly. The report stresses that. You weigh the upfront cost against, say, $40 saved per polled calf, maybe $400 plus saved per avoided mastitis case. That 12% less production lost to heat. Plus, maybe better growth, lower stress, better longevity.
And feed efficiency, too. Potentially huge savings there.
Huge. Feed is what, 50–60% of costs? And like genomic testing, the expectation is that access costs will probably come down over time as the tech becomes more common. Economies of scale kick in.
So the report kind of asks farmers, are you going to wait until your neighbor has a resistant herd before you demand access yourself?
Pretty much. Industry publications like Dairy Herd Management suggest the early adopters, the ones pushing for this, they'll likely see the benefits first. It's something to really think about in your long-term planning.
Definitely food for thought. Okay, another massive piece of this puzzle. Consumer acceptance. Will people buy milk from gene-edited cows?
The million-dollar question, isn't it? Crucial for the whole supply chain, co-ops, processors, everyone. Research seems mixed, but generally more positive than for older GMOs.
How?
Well, studies in the Journal of Agricultural Communications suggest more acceptance, especially if the edits are within the same species, not bringing in foreign genes. University surveys found something like 45% of consumers think food from CRISPR-modified organisms is safe.
Okay, 45%. That's not overwhelming yet.
No, and there's a potential snag. The report notes that specifically labeling milk as from gene-edited cows might make people less willing to pay. So you could have farmers paying a premium for the genetics, but consumers wanting a discount. A bit like the RBST situation back in the day.
Ah, right, that parallel again. So how do you bridge that gap?
The benefit story. That seems absolutely critical. Research by the American Dairy Science Association shows public support goes way up when the benefits are clear.
Like what kind of benefits?
Animal welfare is a big one. Polled cattle, no dehorning. That gets around 71% support. Also clear health advantages like less antibiotic use or environmental benefits. And just explaining clearly how gene editing is different from old GMOs, that alone can boost acceptance maybe 19%.
So communication is key. Framing it around animal well-being, lower environmental impact.
Absolutely. The industry needs to be proactive, tell that positive story, address concerns head on. It really puts the onus on dairy marketers and communicators.
What's the plan to educate consumers effectively about why this is beneficial?
Okay, let's tackle the regulatory maze. The report says it's very different depending on where you are in the world. Let's start with the U.S.
Right. In the States, the FDA treats gene-edited animals under the banner of intentional genomic alterations, or IGAs. Basically, they regulate them kind of like new animal drugs.
Like drugs, so lots of hoops to jump through.
Pretty much. Extensive safety assessments, you need data showing the trait is stable across generations. And with cattle having long generation times, getting that multi-generational data can add years, maybe 4 years or more, to the approval process.
That sounds slow. Are there any signs of it speeding up?
Well, the report mentions some positive, like the FDA giving low-risk determinations for some IGAs, like the SLICK trait in beef cattle, but it also asks a pretty pointed question.
Should regulatory agencies, who might not fully grasp day-to-day farm realities, be setting the pace for this kind of innovation?
A fair question. Is the current system maybe overly cautious, treating gene editing as riskier than the science suggests?
That's the concern raised, especially for precise, within species edits. And studies show these regulatory delays aren't just theoretical. They cost the industry billions in lost opportunities. And you could argue prolong animal suffering from things we could potentially prevent.
Okay, what about Canada? How are they handling it?
Canada looks at products with novel traits, no matter how they were created. Interestingly, Health Canada and CFIA recently exempted some gene-edited plants and feeds from certain assessments if they don't have foreign DNA.
But not animals.
Animals with novel traits, even from gene editing, still face significant scrutiny. The key distinction in Canada seems to be no foreign DNA versus having a novel trait. That difference dictates the level of regulation. It's a bit like the difference between, say, grass-fed and organic, different labels, different rules.
I see. And then there's the EU, known for being pretty strict on GMOs.
Extremely strict. Gene-edited animals fall under their comprehensive GMO laws. And to date, 0 GM animals have been approved for food in the EU.
Zero.
There's talk about maybe easier paths for some gene-edited plants, but not animals right now. So EU dairy farmers could find themselves at a competitive disadvantage compared to farmers elsewhere using these technologies. Again, echoes of the RBST situation there.
Okay, the report brings up a really fascinating, maybe tricky area: organic dairy and gene editing, ideology versus animal welfare.
It's a really complex intersection. Current organic rules, the NOP standards, flat out prohibit genetic engineering, and that includes gene editing.
So organic farmers simply can't use these genetics and stay certified.
Correct. Can't use the animals, can't use their products. But the report poses this ethical question. Is it truly upholding organic principles to potentially let animals suffer from, say, severe heat stress, when a specific gene edit could offer a humane solution?
That's a tough one for organic producers. The report mentioned that California organic farmer, again, saying they would consider SLICK cattle for heat stress if the rules allowed it and it didn't hurt productivity.
Right. It shows there might be openness if the benefits, especially welfare benefits, are clear. It suggests maybe there needs to be a conversation within the organic community as these technologies mature and their impacts become undeniable.
A bit like how robotics were maybe viewed skeptically at first in organic circles, but are now being adopted more.
Possibly a similar dynamic, yeah. A careful weighing of principles versus practical benefits, especially for animal well-being.
So pulling this all together, we've covered the science, the benefits, the hurdles. What's the bovine bottom line? What are the actionable takeaways for farmers listening right now?
Okay, several key things. First, stay informed. This stuff is moving fast. And importantly, advocate. Talk to your co-op, your breed association, industry groups. Push for sensible regulations and faster adoption where it makes sense. Use your extension services. They're great resources.
Okay, stay informed, advocate. What else?
Second, look at your farm. What are your biggest challenges? Mastitis, heat stress, dehorning labor. Figure out which of these potential gene-edited traits would give you the biggest bang for your buck. Think about it like any other major farm investment. A barn upgrade, new equipment. Where's the best ROI?
Makes sense. Prioritize based on your specific needs.
Third, think long-term breeding strategy. How could these traits fit into where you want your herd to be in 5-10 years? Is it polled for easier management? Mastitis resistance for lower costs and better milk? It's really just an extension of the genetic planning you're already doing.
Right, integrating it into existing plans.
Fourth, get involved in the conversation. Industry discussions matter. Farmer input shapes research. It shapes public perception. Bring these topics up at your co-op meetings, your breed meetings.
And fifth, prepare your marketing story.
Yes, crucial. Think now about how you talk about the benefits to consumers. Animal welfare, fewer antibiotics, environmental pluses. The communication piece is huge, as we discussed.
The report frames this historically, right? Like AI in the 40s, genomics in the 2000s. Gene editing is the next big step.
That's the perspective. The dairy industry always evolves by adopting technology. Gene editing looks like the next frontier. So the question is, do you want to lead the charge or risk falling behind?
But approach it carefully, right? Like not breeding your whole herd to one unproven bull.
Absolutely. Measured steps. But the core message from university research is clear. The farmers who are informed, who understand this, they'll be the ones best positioned to benefit. The report ends with a real zinger.
Oh, yeah.
It asks, if gene editing can save a baby's life, what could it do for your herd's health, welfare, profitability? Are you ready for that next revolution? Because according to the major research institutions, it's not if, it's when.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive.
Right.
We've seen the huge potential of gene editing for precise improvements in dairy cattle, big benefits for farmers tackling tough issues like disease, heat stress, but also critical hurdles, regulations, cost, and maybe the biggest one, consumer trust. The need for farmers to be proactive, informed, and really own the narrative about the benefits seems paramount.
That sums it up well. Gene editing offers targeted solutions, but realizing that potential means navigating regulations smartly, handling the economics, and building consumer confidence. This report is basically a call to action for farmers. Stay informed, get engaged, and be ready to make strategic choices about incorporating these innovations.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. What happens long term? For your farm, for the whole industry, if we embrace these technologies thoughtfully versus if we ignore them? What does dairy farming look like in 10 or 15 years? And what part will gene-edited cows play? It's about shaping the future, really. Are you ready to dig deeper and be part of that?
Thanks for joining us on the Bullvine Podcast. If this episode sparked your curiosity, share it with a fellow farmer. Leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Want the full story? Dive deeper into the research and resources we discussed today at www.thebullvine.com. Got questions or topics you'd like us to tackle? Slide into our DMs or drop us an email. We're here to amplify your voice in this conversation. Until next time, keep your herds healthy, your margins sharper, and your vision bold.
Where the future's more than just